everybody, today I'm going to be showing you folks how I'm going to model a creek bed. On my particular layout, it's loosely based on the central eastern Pennsylvania area, so there's a lot of real shallow streams leading up to the first thing I did was laid track. I used extruded foam to make risers for my track. I knew that I was going to have a little bit of a creek scene, so I made sure the risers were a little bit up from the actual main piece of foam, you know, for the base of my layout. So I've had my track laid out, I've got my bridges built. As you can see, I have two of them here. So I've already sort of mocked up where my bridges are. Sort of gave myself a rough idea of the depth of the creek. These lines are a little too deep, and I'm sort of realizing that with N scale. This creek isn't going to be very deep. In the middle, it's probably only going to be about 4 to 5 feet deep. So in N scale, that translates a lot smaller. It's about 5 or 6 millimeters. So it's, you know, a little bit more shallow than needs to be. The number one mistake that I've read that a lot of people make is making the area, the terrain around the creek, far too steep, especially with streams. They've been eroding the area for years and years, you know, flash flooding and shallow, you know, shallow periods of drought and the whole 9 yards. It tends to make the outlying area a lot more of a gentle slope. So as you can see right now, the area where the rail is, it's sort of up a lot higher than the creek, and I did that for the rail or the rail bridges. So what I do plan on doing on the, you know, in the long term here, once I get my bridge abutments placed, is making everything a lot more gradual. So the first thing I did again was traced out the creek. You can see there's a little island planned here. So what I initially want to do is just take my carving knife and slice away some of the foam just to make my life a little bit easier. Using a foam rasp for this entire depth is really going to kick my butt. So the one thing I do plan on doing once I get the riverbed carved out is using a little bit of plaster to make the bed a little bit more, you know, to seal it and also to shape it a little bit more than what my foam rasp is going to give me. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make a bunch of little shallow cuts here. I'm only sticking the blade in maybe 1/8 of an inch, and that's going to let me carve out a lot of this foam here. Once I start cutting away, the pieces are going to come out a little bit easier. So you can use like a paint scraper, and even if you don't have something like that, just a flathead screwdriver, and that'll pop a lot of these little cubes out that I'm making here. So the one thing you can do when you start getting towards the creek edge is start going in at an angle, and that'll start taking a lot of these blocks up. And then again, this section of my creek is a straight area, but as I get deeper into the layout here, it will have a bend in it. So the one thing you want to remember is that the creeks tend to erode the let's say the far edge of the bend tends to be steeper than the inside edge. The inside edge should have more of a very gradual slope into the water, sort of like a beach. The outer edge of the curve of the stream is going to be steeper due to erosion. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll meet back up at the in a second. The next tool I'm using is just a wire brush. This is more of a, the bristles are more of a plastic or a polyurethane, just because this is what I had laying around, honestly. But what I'm going to do is just lightly brush some of the smaller or the tougher chunks out of there. Okay, so after you brush some of the extra foam out of the way, the next thing that I like to do, is take the rasp and smooth everything out. This is going to create your riverbed. Again, I plan on using a thin layer of sheetrock or plaster to make this all smooth and to seal it, so that when it's time to lay or to paint and then lay realistic water or some other material, and I haven't decided which yet, just for the time being, it should just make things a lot easier to shape. Because once that plaster is hard, that's about the best you're going to do with it. So you can see I left enough room for my island there, a little bit more of depth on one side than the other, because the stream's sort of bending that way. And just took some of the extra foam down on the sides because I plan on putting the abutments in, and obviously it's not going to be sheer cliff on the sides from the rail there. So and just try to get all your material cleaned up. Okay, so in the next video I'm going to demonstrate how I put my plaster down, make everything smooth, and then hopefully we'll be painting. Before I do all that, I am going to be putting the bridge abutments in, so I'm going to do a little research there and see what shapes I'm going to be looking for, but the main thing is just making sure everything's measured correctly so that the bridge transitions evenly with the top of the rail.